Racist cop mocks black widower at school pickup, not knowing he's the district attorney himself. What happens when a man's grief is met with cruelty instead of compassion? In the fading light of a crisp autumn afternoon, Marcus Ellison stood outside Willow Creek Elementary, his daughter's small hand clasped tightly in his. The school's parking lot buzzed with the usual chaos of pickup time, parents chatting, kids laughing, car doors slamming. Marcus, however, was a statue of quiet strength, his eyes fixed on the ground. It had been 6 months since his wife, Lena, passed, leaving him to navigate single fatherhood while carrying the weight of his new role as the city's first black district attorney. At 42, he'd seen enough of the world's ugliness to know it didn't always bend toward justice, but nothing prepared him for what was coming. A police cruiser rolled into the lot, its presence drawing curious glances. Officer Daniel Hargrove stepped out, his boots heavy on the asphalt, his gaze scanning the crowd with a practiced arrogance. Hargrove was known in town a man whose badge seemed to fuel his biases rather than temper them. His eyes locked on Marcus, and a smirk curled his lips. To him, Marcus was just another black man in a place he didn't belong, suit or no suit. "Hey you," Hargrove barked, striding over. "This ain't your neighborhood, is it? What's with the fancy getup?" His voice dripped with mockery, loud enough to turn heads. Marcus's daughter, Amara, clung tighter to his hand, her eyes wide. "I'm picking up my daughter," Marcus said, his voice steady but laced with restrained anger. "Is there a problem, officer?" Hargrove laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the air. "Problem? Yeah, you looking like you're trying too hard to fit in. Where'd you get that suit? Stole it from your boss." The crowd hushed. A few parents whispered, their phones discreetly raised to record. Marcus felt the sting of the words, each one a jab at the life he'd fought to build. But he held his ground, his jaw tight, his daughter's hand anchoring him. "You don't know who I am, do you?" Marcus asked, his tone calm but edged with steel. Hargrove's smirk widened, mistaking the question for weakness. "Oh, I know exactly what you are," Hargrove sneered, stepping closer. "A widower playing dress-up, thinking he's somebody. Go back to where you came from before I make this a real issue." The threat hung heavy, a spark in a tinderbox. Amara's grip tightened, her small voice whispering, "Daddy, let's go." Marcus's heart pounded, not for himself, but for her. He'd faced prejudice before, whispers in courtrooms, skeptical glances at City Hall, but this was different. This was public, personal, and aimed at tearing down the man his daughter needed him to be. He straightened, his voice rising just enough to carry. "Officer, I'm Marcus Ellison, the district attorney, and you're making a mistake you'll regret." The words hit Hargrove like a slap. His smirk faltered, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "District attorney, huh? Nice story. Let's see some ID then." His hand hovered near his holster, a power play that sent a ripple of fear through the crowd. Marcus reached for his wallet, slow and deliberate, every move calculated to avoid escalating the situation. He handed over his ID, his eyes never leaving Hargrove's. The officer scanned it, his face paling as the truth sank in. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of outrage and disbelief. Hargrove's bravado crumbled, but he doubled down, tossing the ID back with a scoff. "Doesn't change nothing. You people always think you're above the law." That was the breaking point. Marcus stepped forward, his voice low but thunderous. "No, officer. I am the law, and I've spent my life fighting for it, despite people like you. You think you can humiliate me in front of my daughter? In front of this community? You're done." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others filming. Hargrove's face flushed red, his authority unraveling. What followed was swift. Marcus filed a formal complaint that evening, backed by dozens of witness statements and videos from the parents. Hargrove was suspended within days, his career teetering as the city's media latched onto the story. But for Marcus, it wasn't about revenge. It was about Amara, who'd seen her father stand tall against hate. It was about the parents who'd whispered support as they left the lot, promising to stand with him. It was about the principle that no one, not a grieving widower, not a district attorney, not a black man, should face cruelty for existing. Weeks later, Marcus stood before a community forum, Amara by his side. "This isn't just about one officer," he said, his voice steady but passionate. "It's about a system that lets prejudice wear a badge. We change it together, or it festers." The room applauded, a mix of hope and resolve. As he walked Amara to school the next day, the wooden signpost outside bore a new message in chalk: "Justice starts here." It wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. Marcus squeezed his daughter's hand, knowing the fight was far from over, but certain he'd never face it alone. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.